Disney's headed towards an unmitigated disaster zone. I'm going to break it all down for you. My name is Tom. I spray myself with pheromones so Scarlett Johansson can't sue me. And this is Tom's Take. Well, hey there guys, welcome back to the movie channel. Thank you very much for joining me. If you haven't been here before, why don't you hit that subscribe button and ring that notifications bell so that you never miss out on my take on all things movies. So over the last few months, it's becoming harder and harder to be a Disney fan because under their new leadership, Bob Chapek, the new CEO, after Bob Iger stepped down from over a decades-long run as the CEO of the company, made Disney the success that it has been over the last 15 years, taken it to unprecedented heights, made it the biggest, most prominent movie studio in the business. And then in almost under a year, Bob Chapek came in as the new CEO and has systematically taken down everything that Bob Iger has built. So I am going to get into all the stuff with Scarlett Johansson and the new news that came out about Dwayne The Rock Johnson and Disney, but I want to take you back to Bob Chapek taking over as the CEO of the company. When that first happened last year, Bob Iger stepped down. He's still the chairman of the board, but he's no longer involved in the day-to-day running of the company. That is now in the hands of the other Bob Chapek. When that happened, I thought, Bob Iger's a smart man, and he's clearly put someone in the position of CEO who he's extremely confident is going to, continue on with hopefully his vision and do a good job at running the company. Bob Iger has had, and he said this, it's in his book, Ride of a Lifetime, which if you haven't read, it's a really good read. Bob Iger has 4 core values that he ran Disney by. The first one being let the creators lead, remove unnecessary layers of bureaucracy, put qualified, experienced people in the right positions of leadership and clarity and vision and process. And Bob Chapek has come in and added unnecessary layers of management, taken away powers of the creators, to the point that now we're hearing stories from inside Disney and people, insiders who work at Disney saying, this company's a mess. We're not sure who we have to report to on certain things, who's in charge of this. And then, of course, you get to the Scarlett Johansson situation. Now, this is something I've been following, but I've been debating whether or not I wanted to do a video on it because it's been covered by other creators at length. And the more and more news that comes out about it, the more pissed off I get at this whole scenario because it could have easily have been avoided. And I've seen a lot of misinformation and a lot of, misguided views on the subject, uninformed opinions going around online about the Scarlett Johansson situation, which got even more complicated today with something that Dwayne The Rock Johnson had happen. Scarlett Johansson has filed a lawsuit against Disney for breach of contract because she was entitled to back-end points on Black Widow. What are back-end points? Back-end points are something that not every actor, very few people in the business, they get an extra bonus when a movie makes a certain amount of money at the box office. And when Scarlett Johansson's contract was signed, I think way back in 2017 to make the Black Widow movie, they had an understanding, and it's in the contract, that the Black Widow movie would get a theatrical release. Why wouldn't it get a theatrical release? There was no global pandemic at the time. And then, of course, when Disney decided to move Black Widow to a day-and-date release on Disney Plus and in theaters at the same time, that came into breach of that clause in their contract. And so Scarlett Johansson's lawyers went to Disney and tried to get them to come to the table to renegotiate some kind of compensation because she was missing out on potentially millions of dollars. And from everything we've heard from her legal team, Disney has just flat out ignored them. And one of the reasons it's prompted me to make the video on it now is because seeing all of the chatter online about this, there are a lot of people saying, she's already rich. She's already got all these millions of dollars. Why does she need more? And the fact of the matter is Scarlett Johansson is not asking for money that she isn't contractually entitled to. What she's saying is, we agreed that I would get compensated based on box office results. And when you put it on Disney Plus, you significantly reduce the amount of box office that I can get. So she's fighting for money that she is legally, contractually entitled to in her contract. But if you felt like you were getting screwed out of millions of dollars potentially, you would sue that company too. Don't lie, you totally would, and so would I. So fast forward the day after we hear about the Scarlett Johansson lawsuit, Disney decided to put out a statement, as we would expect them to put out. We look forward to settling this in court. We believe that we have fully complied with her contract, and we will settle it in a court of law. Well, that's not what the dimwits over at the Mouse House said. They put out this. There is no merit whatsoever to this filing. The lawsuit is especially sad and distressing in its callous disregard for the horrific and prolonged global effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. This coming from the same company who opened their fucking theme parks last year at the absolute height of COVID-19. But oh no, Scarlett Johansson's being inconsiderate to the effects of the pandemic. What the fuck is wrong with you guys? And on top of that, they also just outed her salary, which is not a professional thing to do at all. So this has gone from just a little tiny, not a tiny dispute, but a little business dispute, and it's suddenly become very, very personal. And this is something that never would have happened under the leadership of someone like a Bob Iger. When you have trouble or chaos at the top level, it's going to trickle down. So when you have an incompetent leader like a Bob Chapek, who's clearly shown that he just doesn't really care about talent relationships, loves to add extra layers of management where there doesn't need to be, so it makes it confusing for everyone that works at the company. You have someone like that at the top, it's going to trickle down to the point that we're hearing that Kevin Feige is embarrassed by this. Bob Iger is pissed about this. Bob Iger and Bob Chapek don't talk anymore. I know there are people that aren't interested in things like this, but the reason this gets me so fired up is because I am a massive Disney fan. Clearly, you can see from all the Disney paraphernalia I've got around me, I'm somewhat of a Disney fan. So it's really disappointing when something that I am a fan of, something that I like and that I care about and that I want to see succeed, does some stupid shit. When you're the new CEO and you put your buddies in position of power, like a Kareem Daniel, who was formerly a guy in charge of consumer products, who now gets to decide how big, massive Disney and Marvel movies are distributed, who knows nothing about how this thing works, and now all of a sudden he's in charge of deciding whether these $100 million movies go, or replacing the great Alan Horn, a seasoned veteran movie executive, with some guy who worked in finance, to the clearly incompetent PR person who put out that bullshit, bogus personal statement. It's really clear that Disney knows they have no legal standing in this Scarlett Johansson lawsuit, because you wouldn't put out such a scathing personal attack in a statement like that. It was a desperate attempt to, save some face, and all they did was make themselves look worse. But it's very obvious to me that Disney knows they're in trouble, so they're just trying to sling some shit. That brings us to the thing going on with Dwayne The Rock Johnson right now. There was an article in Variety that came out, I think today or yesterday, that said The Rock actually got his contract renegotiated, because Jungle Cruise, like the Black Widow movie, also had a day-and-date premiere access release on Disney+. And when Scarlett Johansson filed her lawsuit, many of us were asking, is Emma Stone, star of Cruella, going to do something like that? Is Emily Blunt going to file a lawsuit because her movie was also moved to Disney+? What about The Rock? Surely Disney wouldn't piss off Dwayne Johnson. Disney renegotiated with The Rock. They renegotiated his contract and compensated him for the fact that they were putting Jungle Cruise on Disney+. That in and of itself is a massive admission of guilt on Disney's part. It is a huge double standard. By the simple fact of them going to The Rock and saying, listen, we know that you're going to get, shortchanged because we're putting Jungle Cruise on our streaming service. We're going to renegotiate our arrangement with you, and we're going to compensate you based on certain things. And for whatever reason, they care about The Rock more than they care about Scarlett Johansson. And again, this is something that never would have happened under the leadership of the great Bob Iger. He would have had this all sorted out. You would never have had this problem in the first place. But under Bob Chapek, who seems to be an incompetent CEO from what I can see, who doesn't give a shit about talent relationships or any of that, but also has this massive double standard of, oh no, we're going to compensate The Rock fairly, but we're not going to do that with Scarlett Johansson or Emma Stone or Emily Blunt or anyone else whose movie got shifted to Disney+. And this brings me to my next point about Disney and why I feel like they're heading towards potential disaster if they don't get Bob Chapek out of the CEO role. Sean Levy, who directed the Ryan Reynolds movie Free Guy that's out in cinemas at the moment. If you haven't seen my review, check that out. But he was doing an interview where he basically said, listen, the Disney team have been nothing but fantastic in supporting our film. And we said to them early on, hey, during the pandemic, if you have to move it to Disney Plus, we understand. And Disney said, rightfully, we believe in this movie and we are committed to a theatrical release of Free Guy. This was way back at the start of the pandemic. And that's great. Disney believes in Free Guy. They wanted to make it a theatrical release. They believe that it could potentially spawn a new franchise. And if you've seen Free Guy, you know that it can potentially spawn a new franchise. I want to see more of Free Guy. But the question that I have to ask is, what does that say about the movies that you did move day and date to Disney Plus? Mulan, I understand because that happened, while the pandemic was at its highest levels. So Mulan, I kind of understand. But what happens with Raya and the Last Dragon, or Black Widow, or Jungle Cruise, or Cruella? If you're the director or the producers or the stars of those movies, what does that tell you? I can't imagine the director of Cruella, Craig Gillespie, or the director of Mulan sitting back and seeing this interview saying, wait, you believed in Free Guy so much that you waited and waited and waited to put it out in theaters. So you don't care about my movie, clearly, because you dumped it on your streaming service. That's gotta piss you off if you're the director of one of those movies that did get dumped onto Disney Plus that was supposed to have a theatrical release. And as a fan of Disney and as a fan of movies and as someone who wants to see these studios succeed so that we get great entertainment, it's really disappointing to see what the new leadership at the Mouse House is doing, because again, when you have bad leadership at the top, it trickles down the entire company and then it gets passed on to us, because as a result of this bad leadership, we are in a position as fans to get less quality movies, or having potential, big name actors or directors saying, fuck it, we don't want to work with Disney anymore because we just don't know that we're not going to get screwed out of something that we are contractually entitled to in our contracts. So look, this video was not meant to be a giant, hey, let's bash on Disney video, even though it could seem like that. But this is coming from someone who, I'm a big fan of Disney. I love Disney. I love Disney movies. I love Marvel movies, Star Wars movies, some 20th Century Fox movies. Disney has made a lot of things that I love, and I want to continue to love their movies. I do, and I will continue to love their movies, but it's just really concerning to me, and it really does annoy me, and I hate seeing bad business get done. So what are you guys' thoughts on this whole scenario? The Scarlett Johansson scenario, the obvious double standards between how they handle Dwayne The Rock Johnson and Scarlett Johansson. Let me know what you guys have to say in the comment section below. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and ring that notifications bell so you never miss out on my take on all things movies. My name is Tom, and I will see you guys next time.